Hello and welcome back to MTGJankTank.com. My name is Plum, and it's that time again. We have another Historic Brewers review, this time for Marvel Superheroes. So, just as a reminder, I play Jank, and this isn't like a full set review. This isn't a limited review or anything like that. I'm just going to take you through some of the cards that I find interesting, find fun, I think are just good to have as general utility in the Historic format. We're just going to talk about them, and I'm going to pitch you some of the ideas I have, show you what we'll be brewing with set release on the 23rd, and then we'll just kind of have some fun talking and looking at new cards. So I do want to get right into it, and before we do that, I just want to mention sort of some of the overarching themes as we go through. So obviously, there are some parasitic mechanics in this set, mainly heroes and villains as a creature type, which we've seen in Spider-Man before, and obviously we'll see more in the future. But there might be a lot of cards that you're interested in for those archetypes, heroes or villains, that I would love to talk about, but there's just so many cards with those creature types, and you know, everything's going to change as we get more and more superhero sort of sets in the future, that I think it's just something that we'll be continually talking about. So I didn't want to highlight too many of them during this review in general. Along with that, you'll notice a lot of these heroes and stuff are humans and have relevant creature types. Literally everyone on your screen is a human, and humans is a somewhat popular deck, or a viable deck in a lot of formats. But again, there's so many that I don't think I could talk about every single one, say, oh, we could try this in a human shell, or oh, we can try this here or there. And lastly, on the bottom of your screen, you'll notice we do have some new flip cards. I've talked about Moon Mist during the Spider-Man set review, and there's going to be some slides on here that I just want to try these cards with Moon Mist again. So that's kind of the main point of why they're in here. There's definitely some solid contenders this time around compared to Spider-Man, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about why I think they're good in Moon Mist either. Lastly, you'll notice a lot of slides will also have a Mox Amber on them. I just want to reference that. I probably won't talk about it on every slide, but there are so many legendary creatures at different mana values being added to the format that Mox Amber probably has some relevance for a lot of these in a lot of shells. And it's just something to keep in mind, that we're going to have legendary creatures, we're going to have flip cards, and we're going to have relevant creature types. So let's get into it. Right off the bat, we're going to start with a flip card. Jennifer Walters is a 2/3 for 2. Legendary creature, human advisor hero. Your opponents can't cast spells, and then you can pay 6 to transform it into the sensational She-Hulk, which is 6 mana, 6/6, reach, trample. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, and then whenever a creature you control is dealt damage, you may have She-Hulk deal that much damage to any target, but only once each turn. Obviously, it has some similarities to Voice of Victory. Doesn't, has some better stats. It's a legendary creature, so you can't have multiples. However, you don't get the extra tokens. But, like I just said, it plays real well with Moon Mist, and it plays real well with Mox Amber. This on turn 2 into a Moon Mist on 3, you get a 6/6 reach trample, and your opponent can't do stuff on your turn. That seems pretty solid. We're going to talk about some other flip cards from this set as well that also enable a turn 1 Mox Amber, and turn 2 Moon Mist off of that as well. But this is probably one of the better flip card humans that we've gotten since Spider-Man. And if Moon Mist is going to be a deck, which we've tried to make it a deck a bunch of times, this is probably one of the pieces that we're going to be testing out, and hopefully we'll at least give it some power in Historic format. Next up, we are getting the second Infinity Stone. We already have the Mind Stone from Spider-Man, and now we're getting the we have the Soul Stone, now we're getting the Mind Stone. 2 mana, indestructible, taps for a white, it's legendary, so very similar to a regular Mind Stone, it's just a mana rock. And then you can pay 6 mana and tap it to harness it. And then once you do that, the Infinity ability is active. It says at the beginning of your end step, exile up to one other target non-land permanent you control, then return that to the battlefield under its owner's control. So it's a blink engine and a mana rock. all in one. Super cool. Unlike the Soulstone, you only have a mana cost. You don't have to like sack a creature or anything, exile a creature like this. So we've played a bunch of like big white devotion lists with like Thalia's Lancers, which this fetches because it's legendary, and like Sun Titan, Ephemerate, Flicker Wisp, that sort of stuff. So I think this is a good contender because it both ramps and acts as a late game grind engine. Obviously there's cards like Skyclave Apparition, Juggernaut Peddler, you could go Bant and play Soul Herder, Thragtusk, I don't know, whatever you want to jam in your list, but I think it's just a solid card in general. It's not every day you just see a white mana rock. Pretty easy to cast too, and has a late game ability that's pretty relevant in some grindy matchups, especially with like Frog and Jund in the format and stuff. So I like this card quite a lot. We'll be testing it, and we'll see how it does. Next up is Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. We've played a lot of White Weenie in the past, which this is obviously a 2-1 for 1, enables Mox Amber. But the other relevant thing is, if you are playing a humans build, the power-up ability doesn't seem that hard to trigger, right? Between the Rainbow Lands, like we have Starting Town, Cavern of Souls, Unclaimed Territory, Secluded Courtyard, Ancient Ziggurat, which doesn't tap for abilities, Mana Confluence, Reflecting Pool. Like, you can play a 5-color humans list pretty easily. And then, like, Nick Fury, just as a 2-1 is pretty solid. But then you can even just jam it and late game pump 5 mana into it. It becomes, what, a 4-3? And then you get to reveal the top 7 cards of your library. You put a hero, equipment, or vehicle from among them onto the battlefield. If it's a double-faced card, you can transform it, put the rest on the bottom. So maybe there's some build where we jam some crazy, equipment. Like, I know Jitte isn't that crazy, but you have a little more utility and play some, power boosts in the form of, like, Nettlecyst, Jitte, some of the swords, that kind of thing. But then also, it's just a human, so it gets pumped by your lieutenants, your Coppercoat Vanguards, that kind of thing. Plays well with Esper Sentinel, because you're already on color. But I think, in terms of power-up abilities, this is probably one that's not necessarily the most useful, but also relatively easy to account for in a deck that you're already going to be playing Nick Fury in, because the mana base is going to be so simple to get all 5 colors of mana. Don't think he's great. I mean, you could play him with some other heroes and flip those and that kind of thing, but I think it's just something to keep in the back of our minds as we look at humans builds going forward. Next up is Origin of the Avengers. 2-mana saga. When it enters, you scry 2. At 2, you put a hero creature card with mana value 3 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. If you don't do that, you just draw a card. And then for Chapter 3, you put a counter on each creature you control. If you don't put a creature into play, it's just 2 mana, scry 2, draw a card, pump your team, which I think is pretty good. However, the turn you play after this, right? So if you play this on 2, you get to immediately double 3-drop on turn 3 if you happen to have that extra hero in your hand. Now, this is one of those things where you would have to go through all the heroes, Spider-Man 2, and just kind of see, like, what's relevant. But there's some decent stuff, like Arachne, Psionic Weaver. It's a 3/3 for 3. You get to look at opponent's hand and then choose a type other than creature and sort of tax the opponent. It works really well with Spider-Man 99 because you can't cast it during your first, second, or third turn. So instead, you sort of skip that and just put this into play. And that's a double strike vigilance. And then if you played a land or cast a spell from anywhere else, blah, 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 deals damage equal to its power. So, I don't know. It seems good. Again, even if you're not playing the hero, you could play this in a Weenie Shell. I think, like, Flowering of the White Tree and whatever is better, but it's cool to have draw and scry in, a saga that those kinds of decks normally don't have. But as we continue to get more superhero sets, like the Cosmic one with the Guardians of the Galaxy, blah, 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 in the future, I think this card could be pretty hot and supply you with a lot of value in terms of, like, aggro. Like I said, with being able to cast a creature on turn 3 for 3 mana and then put another 3-drop into play on turn 3, too. Political Triumph is a new type of enchantment called a plan. And basically, whenever you do something that triggers the plan, you put a counter on it. Once it has X amount of counters, which is different for each one, you get some big ability and you sacrifice it. So in this case, this is a 1-drop. Whenever a creature you control enters, you get to scry 1 and put a counter on it. And then when the 4th plan counter is put on it, you sack it, draw a card, and put a +1/+1 counter on each creature. So again, actually very similar to Origin of Avengers, but kind of all in one. But this, I mean, this is a lot of power for just 1 mana. If you're playing, like, Boros Convoke was kind of hot for a little while, and this could easily do that, especially for, like, a tokens build. If you're gonna jam all those creatures, Guide Pride, Ornithopter, you could even maybe somehow play this with, like, Lethal Demolition. Venerated Loxodon is gonna be super easy to power out, so you're gonna get counters from this, draw a card, plus have enough to get pumped from the Venerated Loxodon. And it just feels like this is a very solid turn 1 play in these aggro decks, especially if you're playing these cheap 0-drops like Ornithopter, Toolcraft Exemplar, Esper Sentinel, and the like. So I definitely want to revisit like a Loxabots style build and see if this can give it some extra oomph. Next up is Super Soldier Serum. It's an aura. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2. First strike, Vigilance, is a legendary soldier in addition to its other types, and whenever it attacks or blocks, you can attach any number of target equipment you control to it. Kind of some dual roles here. Bottles and Light Paws and auras can play it. +2/+2, first strike, Vigilance isn't that bad for 2 mana. Also, obviously, with Light Paws, you can go find some other stuff. But I think it's more important in, like, Hammer Time, where you get to buff. First strike and Vigilance is relevant for blocking. And then, you know, you get to swing with whatever, your Esper Sentinel, and immediately attach a hammer or a Jitte or a sword or whatever it might have. Cauldron Complete, that kind of thing. Kind of weird because I feel like Hammer Time and Historic already has a lot of cheap ways to put that out with the cat. We have, we're getting, what, Steel Shaper's Gift, too. Plus, we have Sigarda's Aid. But this is just a nice backup with some relevant keywords that I think we should keep an eye on, especially if it also triggers on blocking, too. Another option for our Moon Mist deck, we have Bruce Banner, which is a 1/1. You can pay double X, draw X cards. Notably, you can repeat that. He's a human, legendary creature, 1/1, blah, blah, blah. But he can also transform or be cast as the Hulk, which is 6 mana, 8/8, reach and trample. And whenever it's dealt damage, you put a counter on it. And then if he's attacking, you get to untap him, and there's an additional combat phase. I haven't really looked into what kind of things can, like, combo with that in order to, like, keep pinging him and have infinite combat. But I'm more interested in, like, turn 1, Banner, Mox Amber, turn 2, Moon Mist. And then you have an 8/8 reach trample. Also, I didn't talk about it with She-Hulk, but we can also play Release the Wind. So, like, turn 1, Banner, Mox Amber, turn 2, Land, Release the Wind, and then cast it as the Incredible Hulk instead. Again, giving you an 8/8 on turn 2, again. So there's some redundancy. And Spider-Man had, like, Kren, which is a decent flip card. There's, like, Delver and a couple other things that might be worth looking at in terms of blue. But it's cool that we have some redundancy to get at least one powerful creature flipped, whereas with Release the Wind and then Moon Mist can flip your whole board. But I think this is another valuable piece of the puzzle for some sort of Moon Mist shell. Next up, we have Ironheart Clever Champion. 5 mana, 3/4 legendary artifact creature, human hero. Has Improvise, Flying, and then non-creature spells you cast also have Improvise. It does a lot. And it's interesting in terms of, like, affinity, because I feel like current affinity with, like, Pinnacle and whatnot, okay, you can pump out a ton of artifacts, but then your main cards already have Improvise, if that makes sense. Like, Cannoneer has Improvise already, Thought Monitor has Affinity, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So, you maybe have to search for something else big that you want to be casting. However, it's pretty cool with something like Weapons Manufacturing. Pinnacle plus Manufacturing gives you a ton of mana that you can use to improvise things with Ironheart. Kind of similar to Urza. I was interested in, like, what was that? Tamiyo's Story Circle, I think is the name of the card, where you can discard your cards and make double that many clue tokens. Because then that on turn 2 would probably let you cast Ironheart on 3, and then you have, like, a ton of mana, and then you could do something fun like K-Commands. You could play Chalices and tap those to help pay for other stuff. So I'm not entirely sure what direction you want to go with it, but it's a powerful spell. It's cheap to cast. Hopefully you're only casting this for 1 or 2 mana. It's a flying body on a 3/4, and you helps sort of accelerate you into some very high-powered spells pretty quickly if you have the board for it. So I'm thinking some sort of affinity build, but I think a K-Command shell with, like, Eldrazi, or I'm sorry, you can't cast non-creature spells, but a K-Command shell that goes into, like, Ugins or something could be cool too. Kid Loki, 1 mana, 1/1, God, hero, villain, legendary creature. Each creature control that put 1 or more counters on, had counters put on it this turn has hexproof. And then whenever you draw your second card each turn, you put a counter on Loki. So kind of similar to Marauding Mako, where as you're just playing the game, Mako grows off discard. However, Loki only gets 1 counter per cycle, which is whatever, but it does play well with Faithless Looting as well. And then kind of more relevant is it protects your Psychic Frog, right? You can discard a card, put a counter on it, and then you automatically get the hexproof trigger. So these two pair quite well, and then swinging with Frog obviously draws you the second card to put another counter on Loki each turn. So these two are sweet. Mox Amber's relevant, again, especially if you're playing like Tamiyo, Grand, that kind of stuff in those same shell. Gives you some extra speed. And then this is just more so like, it would be fun in like a Prof Eidetic Memory build. You're already drawing a bunch of cards. And like, if you're swinging with Tamiyo, you make clue tokens. You can crack those at instant speed to give your stuff hexproof. So I think it's just a fun little utility piece that has some real power, grows over the course of the game. But I think people are mainly going to jam it with Psychic Frog. Another Loki, God of Mischief, 2 mana, 2/1. Whenever a player or permanent becomes the target of an ability you control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, kind of like a fixed Nadu. It's a 2/1, so cheaper to cast, legendary, blah, blah, blah. But it's just a player or permanent. Doesn't matter what it is. So you can, equip Lightning Greaves to this as many times as you want each turn, blah, blah, blah. You get 1 card. Loki only triggers once time, but you can re-equip Lightning Greaves each turn, if that makes sense. So you don't really have to commit anything else to this sort of synergy. And it gives this hexproof, basically. So it's a nice little draw engine there. But then also, if you're playing something like Relic of Progenitus, you can just play this on 1, play Loki on 2, target a player, and immediately draw a card right after. I could see this maybe in, like, Esper Tetramos, too, if you're already playing Relic. And just drawing a shit ton of cards every turn. But, we'll see. The once each turn clause is a pretty big hindrance, but we've already seen Nadu and, what was the other one? Satoru and whatever else play anyways, so keep an eye on it for sure. It's a sweet little card. This is just a card I thought was interesting. Secret Invasion, 3 mana, aura, enchant something you control. When it enters, you get to exile up to one other target creature other than enchanted one until it leaves the battlefield. And then the enchanted creature becomes a copy of that creature until the aura is gone. But the enchanted creature also gets Ward 2. So it's kind of like if you took an Oblivion Ring, smashed it together with a Shelter by Ghosts, and instead of getting some extra, like, keywords, you get to transform the creature into something and give it Ward 2. So, I don't know. Maybe you snipe a frog and suddenly you have a frog. Maybe you copy Shieldred and now you have a Shieldred with Ward 2 and your opponent's down. 3 mana is kind of expensive in this format. I don't know what deck necessarily needs a Sheltered by Ghost effect in blue. But I think being an enchantment, you could play like a traditional Simic Bant Boggles build and have access to this. But it's just very unique for blue to get an effect like that, and Ward 2 is nothing to scoff at either. Next up, we have Shuri, Wakandan Inventor, 2 mana, 2/1. Again, a legendary, so plays well with Mox Amber. Artifact spells, you cost 1 less to cast, and then target artifact you control becomes a copy of a second target artifact, except it's not legendary. We have tried to play blue steel in the past with Lodestone Golem and Renowned Weaponsmith and Unctus and Smuggler's Copter and Thorn of Amethyst, which is legal and historic. People forget that. And we've been playing like Mechanaut, Goblin Mechanaut, which is a little 2 mana flyer, blah, 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 that reduces mana by 1 for artifacts. But I think this card's just better because it also gives you, like, you know, you could swing with, or I'm sorry, you could play a Lodestone Golem and then, you know, pay 1 and turn a Seat of the Synod, a land, into a second Lodestone Golem and swing with that. You know, you could copy an Unctus and draw a bunch of cards and pump your team. Copy a second Smuggler's Copter. Whatever it might be. Mox Amber's in there too. You could play Tameo. You can play Emery. So lots of cool stuff. The copy ability is pretty relevant. And it already sort of plays into your game plan of a blue-based artifact shell. So I definitely want to test this out and revisit this archetype as a whole. Super Intelligence, 1 mana, aura, at the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, that player draws a card. So it's kind of like a curiosity, but you don't actually have to connect. You just get the card draw as long as the creature's alive. So for something like throwing it on a Slippery Bottle or a Sleep Curse Fairy, something that has built-in protection, hexproof ward, this is just like a pseudo Phyrexian Arena, kinda. You just draw on cards immediately. It's super cheap too. But I am kind of interested with like other synergies. I don't think we've ever played Tiger Seal on stream. However, these two play really well together because this triggers at the upkeep. So this taps, you stack it, and then if you're enchanting the Tiger Steel, you immediately draw a card and untaps. That could be in that like Prophetic Memory build, Winter Night Stories, that kind of stuff. So these are pretty sweet. And then, I don't know if it's super relevant, but it is kind of fun with like Lady Octopus. Whenever you draw your first or second card each turn, put an Ingenuity counter on it, and then you can cast artifacts from your hands without paying their mana cost equal the number of counters. So like, turn 1, Lady Octopus, Mox Amber, enchant with Super Intelligence, right? Next turn, she goes up 2 counters. And you can start casting 2 drops for free, and then the following turn, she goes up to 4 counters and start casting things for free, like Lodestone Golem and such. So this actually could be relevant to this sort of shell too. But that's just another cool little synergy that I thought was fun to check out. Next up, we have the Wondrous Wasp, which is a 2 mana 2/1 human hero with flash, flying, and when it enters, you get to tap up to 1 target creature. It loses all abilities for as long as Wasp remains on the battlefield. So, kind of like Merfolk Trickster and Tidebinder had a baby. Has flash, and I like that it has evasion on a 2/1 body. But I think, more importantly here, like, yes, it can tap down a blocker and, like, trade out the abilities or whatever, but the tap does not stick around, right? It just taps until the next turn, blah, blah, blah. But it loses all abilities for as long as Wasp is on the battlefield, meaning that you can swing with a Death Shadow and then flash this in, target your Death Shadow, and it becomes a 13/13 because it loses its ability, just like the interaction with Dress Down. We also saw this with Abigail from Strixhaven in a similar way, but I think this is a much more relevant color. A 2/1 body with Flash, allowing you to play at instant speed, is super cool. We've already seen, like, Dimir and Grixis Shadow be a thing in the past with, like, Stubborn Denial and whatnot, so I think these two play quite well together, and I'm excited. We played Death Shadow to really good success a few months ago. I think we played an Orsov list, but I'm excited to try out this in a Dimir shell as well. Black Widow Super Spy. This one's nothing crazy, but we have been trying to make a Labyrinth Raptor list work. So this is a 2-mana 2/1 legendary human spy, has Menace. Then whenever it deals damage to a player, they exile cards from the top of their library until they hit a non-land. You can put a +1/+1 counter on Widow, so it gets bigger. But if you don't, you can cast the exile spell with whatever, any type of mana. So it either connects with your opponent and grows, or it connects with your opponent and you get to steal something. So in a lot of ways, pretty similar to Robber of the Rich. Obviously, this trigger's just on attack, but having Menace seems pretty good. Labyrinth Raptor, like I said, is something we've tried to make work, where whenever a creature control with Menace becomes blocked, a player sacks a creature blocking it, and then it can pump all the creatures with Menace. It's another legendary creature, so enables Mox Amber, and that's probably kind of all I have to say. It's nothing crazy, but it's another, you know, tool in the toolbox for an archetype that I've been working on. That's probably not good, but it's fun. This is the Jane Tank, right? Next up, Avengers Disassemble. This is just a nice utility piece. It's a sorcery. It's choose one or both. Deals 3 damage to each creature, or you blow up a land, and they go search for a basic. So, it's like a Sweltering Suns, or a Pyroclasm, or whatever, a board wipe with a Price of Freedom or Cleansing Wildfires stapled to it. Yes, you don't draw a card, but you trade that out for the option of having the ability to do both. Blow up creatures and blow up lands. Now, is there a solid Ponza list in Historic at the moment? Not really. People have tried, like, the Boros version that Modern has with White Orchid Phantom and stuff, and this may play into that. But could spawn something a little bit bigger with, like, actual Stone Rain or Magus of the Moon or something like that. Even, like, 4-drop Nahiri, the Harbinger. I could definitely see some sort of big Ponza lists go around, or even just traditional green-red Ponza as well with Utopian Sprawl and stuff. But it's just really good utility to have, right? If you're a deck that wants to play a board wipe like this in the sideboard, like Anger of the Gods or something like that, now you also have access to land destruction against, like, the Valakut matchup, or mono green to blow up Nykthos and stuff too. Death to our enemies. This isn't necessarily a card I think is crazy. You can kind of just write this one off a little bit, but I did want to talk about this because, one, it's a decently powerful ability. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get a tapped treasure token, and you put a counter on it. And then when the 4th plan counter is put on it, you sack it, and you get to deal 7 damage among 1 or 2 targets. Notably, you can consign or counter the triggered ability of any plan so that it skips the sacrifice. So yes, you also lose out on whatever that sack ability is, but then you get to keep that sort of generic ability that just kind of sits there on the field. So in this case, after you skip that counter, suddenly you're just, every time you cast a non-creature, you get a tapped treasure. That's a lot for 3 mana. I don't know if it's helpful, especially since they're tapped, but it's interesting. This is also kind of cool with, like, Ruby Medallion, Manamorphose kind of vibe. You know, you play it, you make 4 treasures, you sack, and suddenly you deal 7 to something, and then you only have to hit your opponent for 13. I personally think it's way too slow. You never see play in Ruby Storm, but it's just an interesting thing to think about, because 7 damage is actually quite a bit for 3 mana. Plus, you get to ramp yourself with treasure tokens. But, again, happens on the following turn. So, just something to make note of. Pretty cool. I like these playing cards a lot, but I think it just has some cool interactions that I wanted to mention, too. Next up, is Hawkeye Master Marksman, 2 mana, 2/2, first strike reach. Like I said, Mox Amber, legendary creature. It's a human. Whenever Hawkeye becomes tapped, you can pay 1 up to 3 times. When you do, choose up to that many. So you either get to make something not blocked, deals 2 damage to target player, or you get to discard and draw a card. I think maybe like 5 years ago, this card would have been sick. Nowadays, I don't think it's doing very much. I just wanted to mention it because it does have some cool little synergy with like firebending, where you could swing with both of these. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Monstrous Rage your firebending student, so you can make like 3 or 4 mana, and then you can use your firebending mana to pay for all of these costs. So you can make something not blocked, ping, and then draw a discard. Again, don't think it's good. First strike reach. If it had haste, it might be relevant. But they decided to give it some archer abilities instead, which makes sense. But it's a really sweet looking card. I think it's just got power crept out of the format. But will that stop us from playing it? Probably not. We'll try something with it. Next up is Hawkeye's Bow, which I've seen people talk about because there's a 2-card combo in like Pauper and Legacy. This is a 1 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has reach. And then whenever equipped creature becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. This is an infinite combo if you have 2 Kiora's followers. Right? You play a follower, you equip, you have a second follower, you tap to untap the first one, or the second one, then you tap the second one to untap the first one, and whenever you tap the equipped one, you ping. So you deal infinite damage just by untapping each other back and forth. Notably, Kiora's follower is 2 to roll off Green Sun Zenith. We have Mockingbird, so you don't have to always have second follower in hands. We also have some bigger cards that are 3 mana, like Kelpie Guide, that do the same thing. Untap target permanent you control, so you can do like these 2 instead. They can all be found off Coco. You can shove this in a Birthing Ritual shell. We have Plunderer's Prize, or there's a 2 mana card that searches for an artifact. We have Gamble. There's a lot of options that I think could maybe make something like this work. It does suck that you have to keep these in play. Obviously, you could splash into another color and play Tyvar, so you could activate abilities with haste. That might be too many colors. There's another card we'll talk about, Shang-Chi, that could do it. That's just mono green. That would allow you to do it at instant speed. But this just pay 1, equip 1, 2 mana to kind of go off seems kind of crazy. It's just, how do you keep these on the board during that time? But it's a very cheap combo. If you don't play Guide, you can probably keep everything under 2 mana, which allows you to play Luris somehow if you wanted to delve into those, like a 4 or 5 color build. But I think some sort of like Birthing Ritual shell would probably be best. Noble Hierarch. And then you could also, like, if you wanted to, you could also play like Oculus and Harbinger as a plan B. But we'll probably try this out quite a bit since, I don't know, it's 3-card combo, but 2 mana for everything is a pretty good addition to the format, I think. It's just whether or not we can do it quick enough to outspeed some other stuff, because I would think this would go off on turn 4 unless you're playing some mana ramp like Hierarch and stuff. So we'll see. But I thought it was a cute combo, and I just wanted to point it out. Next up, we have Mjolnir, Hammer of Thor, 4 mana, legendary artifact. When it enters, it deals 4 up to 1 target creature. You double all damage equipped creature would deal. You can equip the Worthy, which means a legendary non-villain that's red or white. And then you can discard a card. This card, it deals 2 damage to each creature. So in terms of like Stoneforge Mystic, it's cool that you can tutor for a 4 damage spell for a creature. However, you're already playing like Meteor Sword and stuff like that, which just blows up permanents. Or you could play like, there's like that Aegis net card, which exiles something. That's an equipment. Can't remember the cards. Like one, a blue and a white. But I think what's kind of more relevant is the discard ability, because it's basically an uncounterable Pyroclasm at instant speed as well. And I don't know, what do we have in the form? Like Living End. Not necessarily needed because they have Violent Outburst on 3, but if, you know, the meta becomes aggressive and that deck has a hard time firing off a Violent Outburst, you could, you know, side into Mjolnir and just use that to wipe the board and sort of give yourself some time to recoup. So, not a crazy card in terms of like a Mystic deck or Hammer Time, but I think the ability to discard it is quite relevant and something useful to have in the format as well. Quicksilver, Brash Blur, a 1-mana 1/1 legendary creature. If it's in your opening hand, you can begin the game with him on the battlefield. He has haste, and then Power Up, which is an ability that says you can pay it once, or if you played this card this turn, then you get to activate it minus the mana cost of the creature. So if you played Quicksilver, its Power Up would only be for that turn. But for 5 mana, you can put a counter on it, and it double strike counter. It's a leyline creature, which means, like, if it's in your opening hand, you could start with, like, turn 1 Quicksilver, Monastery Swiftspear, and swing for 2. We obviously have Leyline of Residence in Historic, but it is nerfed. You have to pay the 1 to copy things. But Quicksilver is legendary, which means you can play Mox Amber. So you could do some silly things with, like, I don't even know. Turn 1 Quicksilver, land. Turn 1 Quicksilver, Leyline, land, Mox. And then you could, like, I don't know, double Monstrous Rage off the Leyline. You could, even without Leyline, you could Monstrous Rage plus Assault Strobe, pump it into a 4 whatever, and then hit for 8 on turn 1. I'm sure there's some other stuff I can't think of, but I don't know if a 1/1's worth it. But the fact that you could get a Goblin Guide-esque amount of damage by playing this plus another 1-drop on turn 1 feels pretty strong. Claim the Kingdom is another plan. Kind of simple. 2 mana. Whenever land enters, you put a counter on a creature you control and then a plan counter on it. And then when you hit the fourth plan counter on it, you sack it and you get an indestructible counter on something. Indestructible is not crazy. However, this is kind of cool with this package, which I don't think a lot of people play, or at least I haven't seen anyone. I have seen people play Ordeal of Nylea, which is an aura. Whenever an enchanted creature attacks, you put a counter on it. When it has 3 counters, you sacrifice it. When it's sacrificed, you go get 2 lands. With Chocobo attacking, right, every time you play a land, you get a counter on Chocobo. You can get to the 3 counter threshold for Ordeal pretty fast. But the second line of text is when you sack this aura, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Meaning you can sack it to the bargain ability of Brave the Wilds, which turns a land into a 3/3, and then you also get to go search for another land and put it in your hand. That means you can also bargain Claim the Kingdom to do the same thing. So I feel like there's some cool synergies here. Probably a little too slow to play like Tifa and stuff, but we do have like Akum Hellhound, Vine Lasher, Chocobo as like 1-drop landfall creatures. So maybe you could get some sort of more enchanty based low to the ground aggro shell that happens to play this. And then eventually you can like protect your threat with an indestructible counter and stuff too. But don't think it's crazy, but just something to keep in mind as well. A lot of the cards in this set aren't like super powerful, but they do offer something in the format that we didn't quite have before. Hellcat Undying Vigilante is probably my favorite card of the set, strictly because it's just Strangle Rootgeist. 2 mana, 2/2 with haste. When it dies, you return it to the battlefield under her control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and she loses her other abilities and gains haste. So she's a 2/2 with haste. You smack people. She dies. She's a 3/3 with haste. Strangle Rootgeist. We have played so much mono green aggro on stream, and I love it. Aspect of the Hydra is the format. We just got Berserk. We have Sir Farron. We have Frenzied Ballast. We have Wolf Pack Leader, Werewolf Pack Leader. We have Experiment One. We have Pelt Collector. We have so many cards that this archetype can jam, but we've been missing like another hasty threat outside of Frenzied Ballast, and Hellcat seems so sick, especially since it's 2 pips for Aspect of the Hydra. You know, turn 1, Experiment 1, turn 2, Hellcat, swing 4, turn 3, whatever you want to do, play a lands, Aspect of the Hydra, play a land, play another 1-drop, Aspect for 4, Berserk it up to 8, swing with the other ones, blah blah blah, hit people for a bunch of damage. Super excited to play this. Is uncommon, human hero, legendary, like Surf Aaron. I don't know if we need Mox Amber, but I'm going to mention it because it's legendary. And yeah, pretty hot. Like this card a lot. Next up, I mentioned this earlier, Shang-Chi, 2 mana, 2/2, human warrior hero. Activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures has haste, which is relevant to that hero combo I mentioned earlier. And then itself adds 2 mana of any one color to activate abilities of creature sources. So kind of similar to like the Omen Hawker, Trackhand Trainer, or Enigma Jewel kind of vibe, in a different color though. But it is nice that you can activate those abilities as if they had haste. So it lets you like chain Omen Hawkers and Trackhand Trainers like the turn they come out kind of vibe. Also quite relevant with Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler, and Insidious Roots. You know, creature token, you can reanimate with Tyvar, but then creature tokens you control have add 1 mana of any color. Whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, you put a 0/1, blah blah blah, meaning that as soon as you make a token, you can immediately tap it for mana. And then the other thing is, we also have been playing a whole bunch of warriors in the past. I don't know if you remember, if you watch stream, we've taken 80 card warriors to Mythic a bajillion times. We recently lost to Johnny. However, there was a point where we tried out a teamer build with Savage Knuckleblade and Audacious Knuckleblade. And Shang-Chi also happens to be a warrior. We have Gornok. We have... There's a lot of warriors. Voltaic Brawler. All the warriors are still there. Stadium Headliner, blah, blah, blah. But now we have a way to activate these abilities like right away. And like Audacious Knuckleblade is an alchemy card. You get to pay 3 to seek another one, put it on the battlefield tapped. You can pay 2 to surveil 2, then untap it, and then you can pay a red to give everything haste, which I think is pretty sweet. Also, Nahila, Blade Blossom, she has an ability where you can pay white, blue, black, red, green. You get to untap all your creatures. They gain like trample and lifelink. And then whenever you swing, you make 1/1 warrior token. This helps pay for that pretty fast. Although this is 2 mana of any one color, which is relevant. However, being able to just like double combat with Nagila plus Shang-Chi seems pretty sweet too. So I think we're going to try this in a bunch of different shells. Roots, some sort of blue-green activate ability, especially with like Lockmare. Lockmare? Is that the card? Yes, the 2 mana guy that like counters stuff, messes with counters, and then warriors as well. There's just a lot this card can do. Very interesting, and you know, obviously it gives itself haste as well. So super sick. Absorbing Man, I've seen a little talk about, not necessarily in Historic, but more Timeless, because it can do stuff with Dark Depths. But it's a 3 mana 4/4 with Vigilance, human, legendary creature. At the beginning of your first main phase until your next turn, it can become a copy of up to 1 target artifact, non-aura enchantment, or land, except it's still a 4/4 human villain named Absorbing Man creature, and he has Vigilance. I think, obviously, you can copy Lotus Field and stuff, but in our case, it's really cool with the One Ring. I don't know if there's a Simic One Ring deck at the moment that would play both of these, but you can copy the One Ring, and then this would become a 4/4 indestructible Vigilance creature, so it can swing pretty well. But then also, it would keep the burden counters, but then fizzle out at the beginning of your upkeep, blah blah blah, untap, upkeep, draw. So you would be able to keep the counters, and it could draw more and more cards as you do it, but you would never take the damage. But then you'd also be able to jam cards off the ring, because this is not named the One Ring. it's still absorbing man, so you could have both of these out at the same time if it copies it. So you'd be drawing a lot of cards. Is that something a deck wants to do? I have no idea, but it's a sweet interaction. Ari's God of War, another warrior. Attacks each combat if able. Whenever an attacking creature control dies, return that card to its owner's hand. I thought this was interesting. It's not crazy. Obviously, like, it sees itself dies if it swings and it gets blocked during combat, whatever. But if you have, like, a sacrifice outlet that is instant speed, like Umbral Collar Zealot, you could be able to, like, swing and get some attack triggers or blah, 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 and then immediately sacrifice them as they're attacking, and then they go back to your hand. And then also interesting is, like, Ball Lightning is whatever, because it dies at the end of turn if it doesn't get blocked. But this is also a Trampler. And then Dreadhood Butcher deals damage and dies, blah, 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 deals damage equal to its power to any target. Grows bigger whenever it slaps someone. I feel like maybe you could do something where, like, you're constantly replaying Butchers and sacrificing them, or replaying Ball Lightnings and sacrificing them, like, end of combat, where they're still considered attackers, but you already dealt the damage. Not sure what that looks like. That seems like a lot of hoops to jump through. It's a warrior, so we can play it in warriors like we just talked about. It's also a 3-mana 4/3, which is just, you know, decent stats in, like, a Rakdos kind of build. So, I don't know. Another thing that's, like, I didn't fully think through yet. We'll probably do some planning for it on stream, but interesting card. Armor Wars. A saga for 4 mana. You may draw a card for each artifact you control. If you do, each opponent draws a card. Chapter 2, your artifacts cost 1 less to cast, and then Chapter 3 deals X damage to target opponent, where X is the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. So, it seems pretty good in, like, a big artifact shell. Maybe not exactly Affinity, but a while ago we played Esper Tesserator and did quite well with it. And this is actually a pretty decent reason to go red. Like, obviously you get Galvanic Blast and stuff like that too. But drawing a card for each artifact you control, especially if you're going pretty hard into the artifact lands, which is like a low opportunity cost in that deck, means I would think this is drawing almost like 4-5 cards by the time you play it. Helps cheapen stuff up, and then it just domes someone for quite a lot. We played a build of Tezzeret playing Demonic Junker, because it was basically a 1-mana removal spell when we needed it, and a win con when we needed it. But this is 7 mana, meaning if you play it early and blow something up, then by the time you get to Chapter 3, I mean, that's 7 damage built in. If you're going real big with, like, Tezzeret Master of the Bridge, you're already doming people equal the amount of artifacts you have, so, like, these close out games really fast. I definitely want to take a crack. Like, I think Chapter 1 alone, you can get kind of crazy. Even weapons manufacturing and stuff, and you just play this as, like, a 1 or 2 of. Dritz Interlacer is probably just better in regular Affinity, but you can definitely draw some insane amount of cards off of this card. So I'm excited to revisit Tezzeret. I just wish Wizards would give us Agent of Bolas, dude. Captain America, 3 mana, 3/4, Vigilance, Human Soldier Hero, Legendary. Whenever a creature controlled becomes tapped during your turn, if it's the first time that creature has become tapped this turn, you untap it. So you get to tap something twice. 1, it can crew vehicles. All your creatures can crew vehicles equal to double their power, which is super sick. You can station spacecraft or whatever. But I think it's kind of just better with, like, Badgermole Cub, right? You just tap your land for double mana. You tap your mana dorks for double mana for Badgermole, and then double mana from the tapping, so you get quadruple mana off a regular mana dork, which seems wild. Ardian Bant, which means you can play Noble Hierarch, you can play Badgermole. You have a nice big top end if you want to go that route too, with, like, whatever, Elder Gargaroth, or you can literally pick whatever you want. You're gonna ramp so hard, it doesn't really matter. Ugin, blah blah blah, anything your heart desires. But I think these two, especially the fact that this is a 3/4 with Vigilance, so it blocks really well too. You can swing with it and still get the ability to crew afterwards. Seems sick. Cloak and Dagger Entwined, 3 mana 2/2, Death Touch, Lifelink, Human Hero. When it enters, you choose target opponent and up to one target creature they control. They reveal their hand, and then you either get a non-land from their hand, or you get to exile the creature you chose until it leaves the battlefield. So it's kind of like a Darkstar Banisher, or a Tide Hollow Scholar, Juggernaut Peddler, Skyclave Apparition combo. But I think the fact that it has Death Touch and Lifelink is quite relevant. And you get the option. You either get to steal, you get to see their hand, get some information, and then can still choose to eat the creature. Or even if they don't have a creature at all, it's up to one target creature. So you can just play this and steal something from your opponent's hand without another target on the field. Yes, it's 3 mana, so it competes with other stuff like this, but I think the option to grab either or is quite strong, especially in black-white where you're already playing like Ketramos, Peddler, that kind of stuff. This is a nice sort of 3-drop to have along with it. Killmonger, not anything super relevant, just wanted to mention this is a tutorable off of Green Sun Zenith, and when it enters, you sack another creature, and you get to blow up a non-land permanent, and then if there's 2 or more creatures in your yard, it becomes a 5/4. That's all I have to say. It's just a nice Green Sun target to have. Obviously, there's like Grist and stuff in the format, but I think non-land permanent is a big thing to have for like a Yawgmoth deck or something. Next up, we have King T'Challa, aka Black Panther. This is just another Moon Mist target. It's a 3/2 for 3, has flash. Whenever a player draws their second card each turn, you draw a card, and then you can pay 6 to transform it or cast it as a 6-drop. It's a 3/3 with double strike. You prevent all damage that be dealt to it, and then whenever it deals damage to a player, you draw a card. And since it has double strike, that means you're drawing 2 cards, which is pretty cool. I think that's it. That's all I want to say about it. It's just a nice card to have, again, for the Moon Mist Shell. Kingpin, King of Crime, the Kingpin of Crime. 3 mana, 1/5, has extort, human villain. Whenever you attack, you can pay 2. If you do, creatures you control with toughness greater than their power assign damage equal to their toughness. So, kind of like a Big Butts Arcades style shell. However, it is in black-white this time, and we do have Mardu Ascendancy. And I've wanted to play something with this in like a Bulwark shell, because this says whenever a non-token creature you control attacks, you get a 1/1 goblin tapped and attacking. But you can sacrifice Ascendancy and creatures you control get +0/+3. Meaning they get a high toughness, so with Kingpin, you're basically pumping your board by 3 power entirely. And you can do this, you could swing and stack this so you get all the goblins first, then sacrifice to get the pump, and then choose to pay the 2 afterwards so that your tokens also get the pump too. You're already playing Bulwark. You could even splash green and go 4 colors, whatever. But that seems like a fun little combo for a butt shell that I haven't really seen anyone talk about. Mighty Thor, Jane Foster, 3 mana, 3/3, flying. When it attacks, you get to exile 1 target non-token artifact or creature. Then you return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Whenever equipment you control enters, you get to draw a card. Super cool. If you're, if you're simple and you're playing Cryogen Relic, you get to bounce this every time it attacks, and then you get to draw 2 cards. Obviously, it plays well with equipments, and it's in Stoneforge colors, so you can grab like Meteor Sword and blow up an extra permanent every turn. You can play Mjolnir and deal 4 to something. You can play Cryptic Coat to get yourself an extra body every turn, plus draw a card. I think it just has a lot of options, and seems quite powerful as a 3/3 flyer as well. Doesn't have a lot of protection. Doesn't necessarily have an ETB effect. I mean, if you're playing Stoneforge, you can maybe play Lava Spur Boots or Skateboard or whatever, and immediately get some value off of it later in the game. But blue-white's already a powerful combo for these kinds of artifact shells, equipment shells, so I think this could slot in pretty easily as well. We've been playing a lot of Mutable Pupa, Priest, Mantis Rider, blah blah blah, Soul Flayers, and this is just another one of those kinds of cards. 2 mana. Power is equal to the number of legendary creatures you control, and then when it enters or attacks, you get to pick another creature. If it has haste, flying, first strike, double strike, death touch, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, trample, vigilance, blah blah blah, you get to put those counters on Adaptoid too. This play is kind of fun with like Ozolith because it gets like a double strike counter, a trample counter. So if it dies, you can actually end up moving all those onto an Ozolith and then dumping them on something else. But I guess it's more akin to Priest of Possibility. The only thing that's really holding it back is the fact that its power is equal to legendary creatures. It's colorless, which makes it super easy to cast. But it's a little awkward in that sense where you have to play some other legendary stuff to actually make it a lethal threat. And then lastly, Castle Doom, which I just want to mention because it taps for any color for an artifact spell, and then you can sack an artifact for 3 mana, and you get a 3/3 Doombot. Only as a sorcery, though. However, late game, that's pretty good. You got a weapons manufacturing, you can start sacking those every turn, deal 2, make a 3/3. Helps smooth out your mana. Seems like a solid contender for artifact shells that want it. That's it for the main set. I am going to talk about Jumpstart. There's not nearly as many cards here, but again, some interesting things that I'd like to sort of test out and keep an eye on for the future. But let's just hop into it. Number 1, Advancing the Spirit. 3 mana enchantment. When it enters, you draw a card, and then you can pay 0 rather than pay the power-up cost for the first power-up ability you activate during each of your turns. As of right now, there are not that many crazy power-up cards. Kang the Conqueror has a power-up for 8 that says put a counter on Kang, and then you take an extra turn. Curves well off a Spirit. Turn 3 Spirit, turn 4 Kang, take an extra turn. There's Thanos the Mad Titan, which you can pay 6 mana, you put 2 counters on it, and then you destroy all creatures with either odd or even mana cost. Those are probably the best ones besides just pumping the creature itself. So, nothing crazy, but if we keep getting the power-up ability in future sets, which isn't guaranteed either, Advancing the Spirit could be pretty solid and do some kooky things. Asgardian Inspiration is just another kind of cool card. It's a 1-mana sorcery. You can exile the top card of your library and play it this turn, and then whenever a source you control deals non-damage to a player, non-combat damage, you can pay 2 and put it back to your hand. So, it's like a cantrip in red. Obviously, it's a little tough because you have to play that card that turn, but it's cool with something like Urabrast, where whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you ping 1, and then you add a red. So then you only have to pay, you deal the damage, and then you only have to pay 1 to bring this back to your hand, and then you can use it again. You can minus Ren and 6, pay 2, bring this back. Obviously, if you're in like a Ren and 6 shell, you're recycling land, so mana's probably not too big of an issue. This is a great late game card draw engine. There's like Feral Youth, 2 mana, 2/2. Whenever it attacks, you put a counter on it. At the beginning of each end step, if a card left your graveyard, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So, like, if you return this once and cast it again, and then during your end step, this guy deals damage, you get to trigger it again, bring it back, something, so on. Nothing crazy. It's not, like, an insane engine, but it's just a sweet little 1-mana card that I could see being played as like a 1 of 2 of in some sort of grindy shell. Devil Dinosaur. I think we've tried dinosaurs once, but a 4-mana 5/5 with trample, and your other dinos get +1/+1 and hexproof. Hexproof is a pretty strong ability to give an aggro deck. You could task this for 3 off a Marauding Raptor. We have Amped Raptor, Kahira. You could play Stalwart Speartail to pump it even more. There's the other 3-mana Dinosaur Lord we just got in Foundations. So, I don't know. Dino's real deck? Probably not, but we're going to try it anyways. Dr. Doom Unrivaled is a 4-mana 4/4 human sorcerer villain, lifelink, and then it has tap, draw a card, lose a life. If your library has no cards in it, you win the game. It's a lab man. For Brawl players, they probably love having a lab man in the command zone. I don't necessarily think this has historic applications, but you can tack this under an Agatha Soul Cauldron and give all your creatures the ability to draw cards, and then this clause is part of that activate ability, so you can also win the game off other stuff. Works well with Tyvar, instant speed, that kind of thing. Don't know what deck wants a black Labman, but cool nonetheless. Fogwell's Gym is just a land that adds red. It deals 1 damage to you, and then it's 3 mana tap, discard, and draw a card. We already have, I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm going to call it Agna. We already have Agna, which is draw and discard, but this is in blue. Fogwell's Gym is kind of like a Dire Sanitarium, Desolate Lighthouse. It's interesting because it doesn't loot, it rummages, which means you discard first. But in like a Boros or Madness-based list with like Fiery Temper, Hollow One, you know, Blazing Rootwalla, that kind of stuff. I mean, this is just an on-color land that has a decent ability for just 3 mana when you have nothing else to do. I think this card's actually quite good, or unseemingly good. Maybe not as a 4 of, but it's pretty sweet, especially late game when you're looking for gas and you're drawing lands. You can just discard those lands to find something else instead of the other way around. So, I don't know. I think this is just a really, really, really solid card to have at the moment. Even for like Reanimator stuff too. I don't know if those decks ever want Dire Reach, but you know, you can pay 3, discard an Ulamog or something, draw a card, and then Emperor, and set yourself up that way. This is another thing that falls victim to the Mox Amber. 1 mana, 1/1, first strike. Whenever Thunderbolt Ross and at least 2 other creatures attack, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Again, we talked about White Weenies. You'll see that coming up a lot in these sets that have such a high legendary creature count. It's nice to have another 1-drop legendary to enable Mox Amber. We already have Kithian. We have Splashing Red for like Legion Loyalist, which also has Battalion. Boros Elite has Battalion. So this could make another sort of low-to-the-ground White Weenie deck pretty strong, because this gives all attacking creatures +1/+1, or +0. So it's basically a battle cry on a human soldier, which these are all human soldiers as well. Thalia's a human soldier, so I think there's something strong there too. Gets buffed by Flowering of the White Tree. So I could see this being played over like Isamaru or something in the future when we try a White Weenie shell. Hitmonkey. Chat, if you've watched stream the past like 2 weeks when this comes out, we have played nothing but Mutable Pupa and Priest of Possibility, and this card right up their alley, especially Soulflayer 2. 4 mana, 3/3, can't be countered, reach, vigilance, death touch, hexproof, haste. That's a great thing to exile the Soulflayer. It's a great thing to hit off Priest of Possibility, and it's a great thing for Mutable Pupa to see as well. So this card is very strong in like a very specific archetype, but between this, Chromanticore, Scion of the Earth Spider, that kind of stuff, this is a very welcome addition because it's actually castable. 4 mana is much easier to cast than white, blue, black, red, green from Chromanticore. So we'll definitely be testing that out. Intrepid Ace is a very interesting card. It's a 1 mana 2/1, and it gets +2/+0 as long as it's not attacking or blocking. So it's a 4/1, which means it can crew things quite well. It's a pilot, so it crews vehicles and spaceships, blah, blah, blah. It's very similar to Monoist Sentry, which is a 4/1 defender in black. However, this can actually attack, doesn't have defender. And it's kind of like, I don't know if Slumbering Trudge wants that kind of vibe, a green-red build, but like turn 1 Ace into turn 2 Fanatic is really strong because it enables the Ferocious ability. There's some other somewhat relevant Ferocious abilities like Crater's Claw and stuff in the format. And I don't know. Obviously, Slumbering Trudge is probably just better for everything you want to enable, but having another high-powered creature for 1 mana that's not Sentry that can actually deal damage seems like it might be relevant at some point. Plus, you know, in red, you can play some other fun, like, big X spells to enable a Fanatic of Ronus, too. So, I don't know. Keep an eye on it. Oh, my God, chat. We're going to play Illusion Tribal. Living Lies of Loki, 2 mana, 1/3. Gets +1/+0 for each other illusion you control. When it dies, you get to draw a card. If you're not aware, Lord of the Unreal is on Arena, which is a 2-mana 2/2. Illusion creatures you control have +1/+1 and hexproof. We also have Krovikan Mist already on Arena. 2 mana, flying, power and toughness equal to the number of illusions on the battlefield. We have Phantasmal Shieldback. We have Phantasmal Image. We have Jace, Cunning Castaway, which is -2, makes 2/2 illusions. I think we can do it. We really need Phantasmal Bear, but this is off to a good start. I don't know why you would ever play illusions over Merfolk, but we're going to do it anyways, and it's going to be great. Matt Murdock, Justice Seeker. 2 mana, 2/2, legendary creature. It's a human. It's legendary. Plays into Mox Amber. Beginning of your combat on your turn, you can pay 1 and put a +1/+1 counter on something, and then each creature you control with a counter on it has ward 1. So, kind of like a Coppercoat Vanguard, but you got to put some work into it. But then it also enables itself by continually pumping stuff. But if you have a Thalia's Lieutenant to put your counters on your whole board, suddenly they all have ward 1. If you jam a Coppercoat Vanguard, suddenly they all have double ward 1. Again, not something I think you want to play as a 4 of, but as an additional copy of like a Vanguard, or maybe you do like a 3/1 split or something, I think it's pretty good. Pick up the Pace, 2 mana, enchantment. Whenever a creature you control that entered this turn attacks, you get to exile the top card, and then you may play cards exiled this enchantment with this enchantment as long as you attack this turn. The cool thing about this is that the cards stay exiled. So it kind of has that Robber of the Rich clause where you can just keep stacking stuff underneath it until you play them, but you can only play them if you attacked. I don't know if Haste Tribal is a thing, but there's, you know, Mantis Rider. Samut does a similar thing. Wherever a creature deals damage to a player, if it entered this turn, draw a card. Robber of the Rich. Obviously, we have some 1-drops with haste like Swift Spear. There's Gruul Spellbreaker, which is a 3/3 with haste and trample. This is like a 2-mana engine that will just draw you cards as you attack. You don't even have to connect with anything. You just have to attack. So this seems pretty sick. Maybe spawn some form of a new red, like, Zoo Shell. Vision, Spectral Synthesoid. 8 mana, 2/5 flying. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a non-creature or robot spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. Kind of interesting. You can, like, Aquatic Subtlety it and then Ephemerate it to keep it around. You can, you know, Death it back or Necromancy it back and then play Omniscience. It's kind of just another one of those tools for the persist combo shell, but you can't actually persist it because it's legendary. Notably, it is an artifact, so you could trash for treasure it too, which is kind of fun. But I think we also just got, what was that card from Strixhaven? Zephyr or whatever, that lets you cast a spell for free from your hand. It's like the Is It one. And this is kind of in the same vein of that, but I don't really think Zephyr has seen that much play, but this is just another cool option. Wasp Shrinking Savior, 3 mana, 1/3, flying. When it attacks, up to 1 target creature gets -3/-0 until your next turn, and then you draw a card for each creature with power less than 0 on the battlefield. I think that line of text is just interesting. Draw for power less than 0. It's a 1/3, so you can play Bulwark. I think it's really silly with Plagon, because you're already drawing a bunch of cards, and then this is 0 toughness, this is 0, or I'm sorry, 0 power, this is 0 power. You can target, you know, an opponent's creature, and suddenly you're drawing 3 cards when you play this. It just seems, or I'm sorry, when you attack with it. So it just seems like a fun card to be playing with Plagon, and I freaking love Plagon. So we're going to try that out. And then lastly, chat, Doomsday. If you're not familiar with Doomsday, go look it up. It's fun. You search for 5 cards in your library, you exile the rest of them, and then you put those 5 cards in your deck in any order. We've already been talking about it in Discord, but there are a few piles so far that lead to wins, depending on how much mana you have. The top one in this case, Does Machines, Labman, Cobbled Lancer, Pact of Negation, Unearth. So you cast Does Machines, which mills 2, draws 2, discards 2. You mill Labman and Lancer, and then you draw Pact of Negation on Earth, and then you discard whatever. You unearth the Lab Man, bring it back to play. You have Pact Negation as backup, and then you pay 2 to exile Lancer that you milled earlier to draw a card and win the game because you no longer have any cards in your library. Next one, you have Thought, that costs 5 mana. Thought Scour, milling Emperor of Bones plus Ulamog. Unearth the Emperor of Bones, and then pay 2 to exile the Ulamog. Or, I'm sorry, exile the Ulamog and then pay 2 to adapt it. Hopefully you're playing a second Ulamog somewhere in your deck, which means this will be a 20/20. Blah, blah, blah. And then, obviously, you exile the rest of your stuff, so you get to swing for like 20 and kill someone. This one is 4 mana, 1 for the Thought Scour, 1 for the Unearth, and 2 for the Adapt. And then there's also Faithless Looting, Goyf, and Thud. You draw, you put looting on top, you draw that the following turn. You loot, draw into Cosmogoyf plus Thud, you discard whatever you want to discard, you play your Goyf, and then you Thud it. Obviously, Cosmogoyf's power is equal to the number of cards you own in exile. And since the rest of your deck is exiled, hopefully this is like a 30-35 or I don't know, 35-35 or something like that. So those are a few of the ones we've thought up so far. There's a couple other things you can do with like Thought Scour and Unearth. There's like a Jace one we found and some other things. You might want to play like Prism and stuff to ramp, but I think the best one here is probably the Thought Scour Bones Ulamog build, because you can slot that into like Dimir Frog and just wreck people out of nowhere by doomsdaying them, kind of like the old Gift Shells did, where you're playing a fair mid-range plan and then you cast Gifts Ungiven to do something to end the game. Same idea, fair mid-range plan, cast Doomsday, end the game. And that's it. That's all I got. Not nearly as long as Strixhaven, which I think is a good thing. I've been talking for a long time. We're at an hour. If you're still with me, awesome. If you skipped ahead, awesome. I appreciate you anyways. But yeah, a lot of stuff in this set. It's always cool to be getting a bunch of legendary creatures. Like I said, that enables a lot of like fun aggro shells, white weenie, green weenie, Mox Amber stuff going on. But overall, I don't think there's anything like crazy impactful. But I think there's a lot of fun stuff in this set that is just nice to have as an option in certain shells, right? Fogwell's Gym is a sweet land to have. The Strangleroot Geist copy is sweet to have for mono green aggro, that kind of thing. So, not sure this will be super impactful. There's going to be a few cards that play well with existing archetypes and stuff. I talked a lot about decks that we've played previously that I now want to kind of ramp up and try some new stuff into. But, yeah, that's it. I'm excited to play with new cards. It doesn't really matter. I don't want to say my opinion on the set too much, blah, blah, blah. It is what it is. We're getting it. It's coming to Arena. I like brewing, so we're going to play with them, and we're going to have some fun. So, anyways, thank you for watching. Hopefully you could pop into stream. We stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, 8 p.m. Next week, as of this video, we get access to the cards in the deck builder, so we'll probably spend most of next week just brewing, so you can keep an eye out on Twitter and my Moxfield page, which you can find below, for all the decks we brew in preparation for release on the 23rd. But that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!